So this is first flight in ForeFlight. I realized when I was going over these slides, I need to maybe adjust that name because that's a lot of alliteration to say over and over again. But again, this is first flight in ForeFlight. So the idea behind this is if you've attended or did attend earlier in the week, we had our ForeFlight fundamentals. The idea behind ForeFlight fundamentals is like literally walking people who are curious about the app through what ForeFlight is and what ForeFlight does. That's what ForeFlight fundamentals is. This course is kind of sort of like the sequel to that course. So the idea is fundamentals is you're new to the app, you're curious about it, maybe we talked you into buying it, you went over to our booth, you took advantage of our show specials, and you purchased a subscription to ForeFlight. Now, you have your ForeFlight just for the first time, or maybe you're a very new user, and you're ready to fly using our app for the first time. Hence the title, First Flight in ForeFlight. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jeremy Lippert. I am one half of the entire customer education team at ForeFlight. There are two of us. The other guy is at the air show in Germany that I always forget the name of, but that's where he is, so that's why it's just me here today. If you have any questions about the app, though, everyone who is over in the booth, it's primarily our pilot support team, and I'll talk a little bit about them as I go on. So if you've ever had issues, if you're curious about how to do something, come over to the booth, find one or any of us, and between us, if I don't know the answer, someone else will know the answer, and vice versa. So this is our show schedule and our show specials up here. Like I said, we have this followed by two other seminars this week. Tomorrow, Friday the 12th, we'll have ForeFlight Fundamentals again. And then on Saturday the 13th, we'll have ForeFlight Power Users. Power Users is basically like advanced tips and tricks. So the idea is if you've attended the fundamentals, you've attended the first flight, the Power Users just gives you some more tools that you may not be used to. If you've already used ForeFlight a lot and you just want to see some stuff that maybe you didn't know was there, come over to Power Users and you might learn some new things. So again, this is that URL for Wings credit I was mentioning. It is posted back there and it'll be up there until Sunday. So if you missed this, it'll be back there, and I'll put this up at the end of the slideshow again. If you have an iPhone, if you hold up the camera app, you should see a little yellow pop-up. Just tap on that. That will take you to the Google Doc. If it's not working or you have an Android phone, sometimes in the Android, it's a little different. The interface is a little different. That short URL at the bottom, the bit.ly/wings-credit, you could just type that into any browser on your phone or back, at your hotel or whatever, on a laptop, and you'll be able to fill out that form. So I mentioned our booth. We are over in Hangar C. We're technically, I think, booth number 100. You can't miss us. If you walk in, we're kind of right in the middle. We've got a really big space. It's us combined with Jeppesen. So if you are doing any IFR flying and are curious about Jeppesen charts, and they've changed some of their pricing, they have some show specials also. Come over to the booth, talk to us, or talk to them. Excuse me. So if you are relatively new to ForeFlight, we do offer our product in 3 separate subscription tiers. These are the very short versions of what's offered in each tier. Essentially, I'm going to make this even shorter than what you see on the screen. If you're just flying VFR, that's all you're doing. Hobbyist flying VFR, the basic plan is probably all you need. If you are flying IFR and flying more than once a month, more than twice a month, the Pro Plus is probably what you need. If you're flying extensively, so this is your job or your job equivalent, maybe you're flying for Civil Air Patrol or something like that, we highly recommend Performance Plus. We do have some show specials for those. Again, I'm not going to belabor those too much because, again, we're here all week and we can talk about those as needed. So I want to take a minute to just run through some newer features on ForeFlight. By newer, some of these are literally in the last couple of weeks. Some of them are since the last Sun and Fun. So this is kind of a curated list of what's new. One of the things we often hear at these shows is people say there's too much new stuff, I can't keep up. If you've ever been using ForeFlight and you're like, I don't know what's new, this is something that most people don't realize is in the app. If you tap on the More button, then tap on Support, you'll see a list. There'll be a list that says watch videos. Those are the videos we produce. Some of them are literally, there's no cameras here, but we do record things like this and put those up there. You'll also see there's a list that says what's new, and those are short videos for every release telling you what's new. This is something we've added in the last, I believe this was only like 3 weeks ago. This is a basic navlog. This is intended for VFR pilots. The idea behind this is we got some, I don't want to say complaints, but some consumer feedback that our navlogs were too complex. Particularly for student pilots. But anyone flying VFR, the concern was that it was too complex. It had more information than was needed for how they were flying. So we've made this basic navlog. This is meant to be printable and viewable in a half sheet, so you can keep it on a kneeboard as you fly. So if you haven't messed with this yet, if you go to our flights tab, tap on navlog, you'll see your traditional navlog. There's a settings button in the upper right-hand corner. You can change to the basic navlog. This is something that, again, launched just a couple weeks ago. This is our new aeronautical map drawer. If you've updated to the current version and your map screen looks different, this is why. The purpose behind this is to make decluttering easier. Again, this was at the request of VFR pilots that thought we displayed too much information by default on the map. If you're struggling with this, because it is kind of a different user interface than you're used to, again, come over to the booth. We'd be glad to walk you through the simplest way to get used to this. I also wanted to show this because all the visuals I'm going to display will not have the aeronautical map drawer because this only came out 2 or 3 weeks ago. These slides were all prepared well in advance of that because I have to provide them over to our marketing team. Power lines in the base map, again, this is also something very new. You'll see power lines on the base map. You can toggle these on and off under the cultural elements on the map settings. The only caveat I'll give you is that these do not have any elevation data. They're just there for visual reference. So maybe in the future we'll be able to have elevation data for them. Right now, it's just there for visual reference. If you're an IFR pilot, you may have noticed we now have grid MORA and LSALT values on the aeronautical map. Short version of this, if you're not familiar with it, is you'll see those sectors on the IFR map. That number there, that's the minimum safe altitude to give you 1,000 foot clearance. So that's what those are. It's just a very quick way to glance at it. Obviously in Florida, we're not seeing too much, but if you look over at like Colorado and stuff, you'll see those values. The LSALT is just the name used in Australia for what is essentially the same values. So if you zoom out into Australia, you'll see the same thing, but there'll be a different acronym on there. This is a little older, and I realize my screenshot isn't actually showing it, but if you have ADS-B in as a source for traffic and you tap on a traffic target, we will display the breadcrumbs for that traffic target so you can see where that traffic target has been, and from that maybe infer where it's going. You can see if student pilots are doing traffic patterns, things like that. Again, this requires an ADS-B in source for your traffic. Day and night overlay, this is just in the global map. We can see where day ends and night begins. As you zoom in, this will fade away. So if you're looking very, very closely, you won't see this. Traffic on runway alerts, this is within the last couple months. Hopefully you never see this because this will pop up if you are on final approach and there's already traffic on the runway, or if you enter the runway and someone else is on final approach. So ideally, fingers crossed, you'll never see this. But this is in the app. It's turned on by default. All of these alerts can be edited if you're getting nuisance alerts or anything like that. If anyone's flying helicopters, some of these alerts will trigger when it's irrelevant to them, and you can toggle them off if need be. So we have frequencies in our airspace alerts. So as we're progressing on a flight, as we get near to an airspace, we'll see a pop-up that tells us you are approaching that airspace. Just below that, we can see the frequencies there, so we don't have to look anywhere else in the app as we're flying. We've added some additional regions. We're adding regions all the time, so it's a little hard to keep up with. I honestly don't know what the most recent region we added is. It might be South Africa. What I'm showing here is after we added Brazil. So we got VFR data for Brazil. You can print flight binders. This seems very simple. It might be something you'll never use, but if you were putting together more than, I don't know, a handful of procedures into a flight binder, you can now print all of them at once. Prior to this, you had to print them individually if you wanted hard copies. And then the last new feature is if you use ForeFlight on the web, a lot of ForeFlight users don't know that it's also browser-based. and that you, with your subscription, no matter what level you have access to the ForeFlight tools on the web. So if you prefer to do flight planning and things on a desktop, on a laptop, you all have access to it, and it syncs across all your devices. We now have JEP charts on the web. Those weren't there until recently. This is about a year old now, but I left this in anyway. There is a ForeFlight app on the Apple Watch. You may have noticed I have a 30-year-old Timex I'm wearing, so I'm not wearing an Apple Watch. There are people in the booth, though, who do use this, can show it to you and show it off to you. I really can't answer any questions about it because I've never owned a smartwatch. All right, so I want to talk really briefly what is the latest version of ForeFlight, just to make sure we're all on the same page. The current version is version 16.3.1. I'll show you on the next slide how you can check what version you have. The internet in here, if you have access, is probably too slow to bother with updating now. If you're not updated, you can do it later. Also, you'll see on the screen here, these are the recommended hardware minimums. So if you're thinking of buying a new device or you have an iPad that is not allowing you to update to the newest ForeFlight, these are our suggested hardware minimums. ForeFlight.com/buying-guide will give you a more detailed breakout of it if you care. Short version, though, is this. Buy something newer than that, and you'll be fine. Buy anything older than that, I guess buyer beware. So to check your current ForeFlight version, this is what the screenshot looks like. If you tap on the More button and then About at the very, very top, it'll show you what your version is. 16.3.1 is the current version. Alternatively, and this is how you could update as well, if you go to the App Store and just search for ForeFlight EFB, if the button says Update instead of Open, that means you have an older version, and you can update it from there. So either of those ways you can use to make sure you have the current version. All right, so, yes?
How often do you come out with new versions?
It's 10 per year, so 6 weeks or so, but yeah, roughly once a month, and then I believe we don't do any from mid-November to mid-January. So 10 per year, roughly once a month. All right, so this is on to the main event. This is first flight in ForeFlight. This does go fairly quickly. If you'd like to follow along, you're more than welcome to. I don't know if you'll be able to, just because I do have to cram all this into essentially like 40 minutes. So we hopefully have some time for questions at the end. If we don't, I'll be here hanging out a little afterwards. And again, we are over in the booth. So what I'm going to cover is setting up an aircraft in ForeFlight, setting up a weight and balance profile for that aircraft in ForeFlight, planning a simple cross-country flight, getting an official FAA weather briefing for that flight, filing our VFR flight plan directly within ForeFlight, recording a track log of our flight so that we can review it later, and then finally taking that track log and turning it into a logbook entry. So this is the idea behind this, is you've recently purchased the app, you're ready to take your first flight. We're going to set you up so you can set up your aircraft, set up your weight and balance, plan your flight, fly your flight, log your flight, all within ForeFlight. So if you are new to the app, navigating around the app is really intuitive. Most people can figure it out without being explained how to use it. We try to make it so your head's down as little as possible so that navigating is intuitive. Along the bottom, you have our navigation toolbar. To navigate to any other part of the app, you just tap on the button to which you'd like to navigate to. The number of buttons visible along the bottom will change with the size of your device and the orientation of your device. So when I fly with my iPad in portrait. Right now we're looking at landscape. All of these graphics will be in landscape just because it's easier for the 16:9 display we have here. But if you were to switch to portrait, there's actually less buttons displayed along the bottom. That doesn't mean those disappeared. Just tap on the More button. You'll find everything you're looking for in the app if it is not displayed. If you are flying or using an iPhone, we shrink that down even more, but all the functionality is the same. As a side note, as long as you have your data updated on ForeFlight on both an iPad and an iPhone, and you have both those devices in the cockpit as you fly, this meets the legal regulatory requirements for using an EFB instead of paper charts. So the iPhone can act as the legal backup for the iPad and vice versa, whatever you're using, as long as you've downloaded the most recent data. It's not necessarily the most recent version, it's the most recent data. So we, every time the ICAO cycle, we follow that. New aeronautical data is downloaded, or new aeronautical data is available for download. As long as you're downloading that, you are up to date and you are legal. So we know how to navigate the app. I showed you how to check your app version. I'm now going to take a look at how to set up an aircraft. Obviously, what I'm going to walk through is not going to be the same for everyone because everyone is flying different aircraft. You may be flying multiple aircraft. Hopefully, though, this workflow is easy enough to follow that you can apply this to yourself. If you're having issues with any of this, again, come by the booth. One of us will be more than happy to walk you through that setup. So I'm looking here at my Maps tab. This is basically the default view whenever you open up the app. Technically speaking, ForeFlight will remember the last page you were looking at. For me, it's almost always the Maps page, but if you were looking at something else, close the app, reopened it, this will open to the last thing you looked at. So when we set up the aircraft, we do want to make sure this is correct because this is the basis of everything ForeFlight does. So all your performance numbers, all your fuel burn, everything that's included in your ICAO flight plan will be based on the aircraft setup. It is not uncommon for people to make a mistake when setting up the aircraft, and it affects other parts of their flight planning. So one of the things we often do at the show is people bring us their device and they'll say there's something wrong. It's almost always weight and balance, but not always. Something's wrong. They'll say this is not correct. And it's usually like one number was entered incorrectly somewhere. So do this when you have time. You should have your POH and any other materials with you as you do this to make sure everything is correct. So I want to open up my aircraft tab. I'm going to do that by tapping on the More button in the lower right-hand corner. You'll notice I don't have an aircraft button on the bottom because I haven't viewed it in a while. That's why it's nested under the More tab. Once I open that up, the More drawer will slide in from the right-hand side. I can access all of these other features. I can access all of these other features by opening them up. What I'm looking for is my aircraft tab. I'll go ahead and tap on that. And this screen will probably look different than your screen because I have something like 25 aircraft loaded in here because this is my job, is to do demos like this. Oftentimes I do demos like this with people who have these types of aircraft. So we build them in here so that we can walk through this. You may see one aircraft, you may see no aircraft. Regardless, we're going to hit the plus button in the upper left-hand corner, the plus button in the upper left-hand corner there, and this will allow us to start adding in our aircraft. There's only 2 fields you actually have to complete in order to finish this process. Those 2 fields are marked in orange, amber-colored text. If you've used ForeFlight for a little while, you may have noticed the color coding on the text. If something is amber or red, we want you to pay attention to it. We're calling it out to you, like, hey, look at this. The 2 required fields here are tail number and aircraft type. They will be shown in amber text or orange text because we want you to look at this. All of the other text you'll notice appears in blue. Anytime you see blue text in ForeFlight, that means you can edit it. It's something that is editable text. If it's grayed out, you will not be able to edit it. I think I can show you an example of that. Primarily, you'll see that if you are trying to edit an aircraft that somebody else set up, you may see the text grayed out. But if this is your aircraft, all those fields will be blue except for tail number and aircraft type, because those are required. You'll notice once I enter in my tail number here, though, this becomes blue because I can then edit it. So for the demonstration, I gave this the tail number FF172. Obviously, you'll want to use your actual tail number there. I'm now going to go ahead and open up my aircraft type field. Just tap on that. That field will open. We can use this form to literally type in our aircraft type, or we can search for one. So for most GA aircraft, ForeFlight has already created profiles for them, and you don't really need to do a whole lot of additional work. So we can use that search filter to find our type of aircraft, and then what we would need to do is just verify that ForeFlight's information is correct. When I'm talking to military customers or some international BA customers, this is not necessarily as useful because we might not have built those profiles. But for GA, almost everything is in here. So what I'm looking for is my C172. So I'm just going to type that into, I'm going to type 172 into my search filter across the top. I can skip that step and just scroll. So it's alphabetical list. You can just scroll through whatever you're comfortable doing. I'm going to try and make sure I find the exact model that I'm flying. So this is another common error where people will say the fuel burn is wrong in my aircraft. It's saying my tanks are smaller than they are, or something like that. Typically, it's because they're not selecting the correct STC or model number. So just be very careful. Make sure this matches what you're actually flying. if you're looking at this, looking at 172s, you'll notice there's a ton. There's a whole bunch of them. So make sure we have one that matches what you're actually flying. Now that said, if we don't have one that matches what you're flying, for stuff like 172s, what we have is probably going to be pretty close to what you have. So you can start with what we have as a basis and then just make those edits to those details as needed. Below each model number, you'll see this blue text here. This lets us know what additional information is available for these models. So we can see my 172 Skyhawk, Oscar 300 Alpha. This has 6 ForeFlight performance profiles. This supports takeoff and landing analysis and has a pre-built weight and balance template available. So I don't need to do any of that work. I don't need to create a custom performance profile. I don't need to create a weight and balance profile. It's already here. So we do have this for a lot of aircraft. Again, if we don't have it for yours, you can probably get away with using one that's close enough and just making those tweaks to that data as needed. You could also email us and ask us to build one for you. I can't guarantee we will do it quickly, but it will be taken under advisement because it does require some effort on our part to go ahead and build that. Now, you'll notice on the right here too, I have these little bugs that say Performance Pro Plus, Basic Plus. The ForeFlight performance profiles and the takeoff and landing performance are only available on our performance subscription tier. And I'll show you some examples what that looks like in a moment. So I've selected my correct aircraft. I selected the 172 Skyhawk. I'm back in my aircraft tab, and you'll notice that a lot of these fields are automatically filled out. They're automatically filled out because we have the manufacturer's data. We have the OEMs. So we can take your model and say, based on the manufacturer, this is the data. Now, we want you to make sure it is correct because your aircraft might be slightly different. So before you fly, please verify this against your POH. We require you to do that when we'll get to weight and balance, and I'll show you that in a moment. But for this basic performance stuff, this is all pulled from the OEMs. I want to tap on my performance profiles field. Again, this is something that is not available at our basic level. But if I go ahead and open that up, I can see my pre-built performance profiles here. And when we're planning a flight, we can select one of these profiles. And this is what's used for things like ETE, used for our fuel burn, things like that. And these can be adjusted also if your experience is that our calculation for long-range cruise is off. You can edit that. You can tap that and adjust essentially it's adjust the bias percentage of fuel burn or speed. These profiles should look familiar. These are directly sourced from POHs. Now, if I'm not a Performance Plus customer, so if you are on a basic plan or a pro plan, you'll see the button at the bottom to add a basic profile. If you choose to do this, this just allows you to put in a single airspeed and fuel burn for different phases of flight. So if you know what it is, if you know what your fuel burn and what your airspeed is for your climb, cruise, and descent, you'll just tap on Add Basic Profile, and you'll add in that information. You'll give it a name. You can build as many as you like. If you're just doing regular GA flying, you could probably just call it default profile or something like that, and then just enter in your climb, cruise, and descent values. This will then be used for all the performance calculations when you're planning with this aircraft. So let's assume I went ahead and I did that, or I have a performance plan. I use the pre-built ones. I'm going to go back to my aircraft setup. I'm going to scroll down, and I can see all of my weight information. Again, please verify this against your current aircraft. Maybe your aircraft has been modified since it left the factory. Maybe the weights here are not correct. These are all editable fields, but we'll see basic empty weight, max zero fuel weight, max ramp weight, takeoff weight, landing weight. Just make sure that is correct. Scrolling down a little bit farther, we can see our ICAO filing code section. Anything inputted here, this is what ForeFlight will use when you file your flight. This is what we transmitted to ICAO. To ATC. So make sure these are correct. If you are uncomfortable doing this or you forgot what these codes are, we do have some tools built into ForeFlight to help you. I also know Gary in one of his sessions volunteered to do it for anybody. If they just want him to do their ICAO filing codes in ForeFlight, go ask Gary. He said he would do it. I don't know if he was kidding, but he said it.
He does it fast.
Cool. He does it, and he does it fast. So what I'm going to do, if I want to stick to ForeFlight if I'm at home or something, in my Documents tab, So I've opened up my Documents tab. You've probably seen this view before. I want to look at my ForeFlight drive. I'll go ahead and tap on my ForeFlight drive. These are all the documents that ForeFlight produces. These are all reference documents. At a minimum, I always recommend downloading the pilot's guide. What I'm looking for is the one just to the right of that. That's my ForeFlight filing guide. I'll go ahead and open that up. This will open up our filing guide. It's not in a new window. I'm still in the Documents view. There's a filing information section, so I just use my table of contents to find this. As we update this, the page number might not match. That's why right now, I believe this is the most updated version on this screenshot. It's page 26. But this is a list of common avionics, or the beginning of a list rather, of common avionics and equipment you might have in your aircraft and the filing codes needed for each. If you've already filed a flight plan with ATC and your tail number is the same, ForeFlight will remember what it is you put in those codes on the filing document. Actually, you didn't have to file with ForeFlight. If you've already filed with that same tail number and that ICAO filing code information was correct on your original filing document, we can pull that off and automatically populate those fields for you. So I'm just going to use the information from my filing guide. I'm going to go really quick through this and just start building out my filing codes here. I'm going to verify my transponder surveillance codes. These are all in that filing guide. And now I've put together a modern light aircraft. I set that up. Again, the only required fields were actually tail number and aircraft type. I went through, verified my POH information, and I added in my ICAO filing codes. My next step is my weight and balance. My profile is set up. There's a couple of different ways to do this within the app, actually. You can do this straight from the aircraft tab. So right now I'm in the aircraft tab. You'll see there's a button here that says add weight and balance profile. I'm going to navigate over to my weight and balance tab. This is how it used to be. The add weight and balance profile is relatively new. By that I mean like a year and a half old, but if you've used this before, you might be more comfortable using the weight and balance tab. Tap on my more tab, tap on weight and balance. I'm navigated over to my weight and balance tab. So just like in my aircraft tab, for my example, you can save a whole bunch of pre-built examples. You might see nothing. I have this because I have dozens of aircraft linked to my account. So if you've already created something, you can see that you can view and edit directly from this screen. Since I'm not doing that in this workflow, I'm adding my new aircraft, my 172, the FF172. I'm going to tap on my plus sign in the upper right-hand corner to add a new profile. The drop-down is going to present you with all of the aircraft linked to your account. This is the one I just created, FF172. I'll tap on that. And if ForeFlight has pre-built templates available for 172s, for Archers, for things like that, we do. If we have a template available, just go ahead and tap on the 4-seat arrangement. This is the only template we have available for this one, but tap on an available template. If you'd like to build one from scratch, you can. It's a lot more work, but you can. I'm going to tap on that because I'm flying a 4-seater C-172. You can see that, again, there are only 2 required fields. One of them will give you a suggested value, my basic empty weight. We are suggesting a value based on manufacturer information. If that is incorrect, don't tap Use. Tap on that field here, and you'll bring up the pop-up keypad, and you can manually enter in that basic empty weight. If this is correct, just use that. We'll also require you to enter in the basic empty CG. Workflows are pretty similar. In this case, I am going to use that. I just tap Use, then I'll tap Confirm. I will manually enter in my basic empty CG. We will not suggest this for you, so please make sure you don't just guess and you do look up what this is. We'll go ahead and tap on that field. Pop-up keypad appears. I'll manually enter in my basic empty CG as 39.58 inches. All of this can again be edited because I'm looking at blue text here. If I need to edit any station, so we can see this has front seats, rear seats, tail compartment, and fuel tanks, and we can see the CG for those stations. These can be manually edited. So if you've removed seats from an aircraft and returned them into cargo, you can edit all of these stations. Workflow should be pretty intuitive. We'll just go ahead and tap on a station. So I'm tapping on my front seats. If I needed to, I could change my arm. I could add a weight limit. I could identify if these are passenger seats, pilot seats, and I could add any notes here. I don't know what notes you would add, but you could add any notes. I'm not going to make any changes to this. In this workflow, I'm assuming the OEM information was correct. I didn't need to make any edits. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and I'll see my my forward CG limits and my aft CG limits, again, sourced directly from the OEMs. So if you have made any aftermarket changes to your aircraft, these may need to be adjusted. If I continue to scroll down a little bit, I can see my CG, a graphical representation of my CG envelope is displayed here. As I flight plan, I'm able to, this will be dynamically adjusted to account for adding passengers, adding cargo, moving passengers off the aircraft, things like that. When I'm finished, I'm going to go ahead and tap on back. I can now see I have an editable and detailed view of my weight and balance profile that I can use to set actual passenger and cargo weights prior to my flight. So again, this is intended to be our first flight with ForeFlight. Let's say you bought the app yesterday, and let's say today you bought a 172 here, you're gonna fly it home. This is that process for setting that up. So for each of these seats, I can go ahead and add in passenger or cargo loads. Again, really simple workflow. We'll just go ahead and tap on that. Pop-up window will appear asking us to identify what and how much of that thing is sitting in that seat. We'll just tap on that text and start editing information. So the load weight here is listed as 0. I'm going to add in some information. You'll notice below that we have some standard weights here. We can use standard weights if you want to, if you're in a hurry and don't want to ask people how much they weigh. These are the default standard weights. These can be changed in the ForeFlight settings. You'll notice, or you may not have noticed, I do not weigh 205 pounds. So I will not be using the standard male weight for myself. I'll go ahead and tap on load weight, and I'll enter in my weight, 158 pounds. And this because I want to make sure my weight and balance envelope is accurate. Now, I wouldn't be flying anywhere near my limits anyway, but just for the sake of safety, for the sake of making sure I'm correct, I'm going to make sure this information is as close to accurate as possible. In order to save time in the future, you'll notice there's a description field. If we add in text in this field, we're going to save that weight and assign that weight to a description. In this case, I'm going to assign it to myself. If I'm the one who's always going to be piloting that aircraft and my weight is not fluctuating violently, I'll just go ahead and name this after myself, and I'll be able to select it from a menu rather than, this isn't that much work, but rather than doing this work every time. So I'm going to go ahead and name my weight Jeremy. It's saved to 158. Now, whenever I'm flight planning, I'll see that. You can kind of see it under here. I'll see that in my saved loads. I'll tap on that close button to continue. And I can see my custom station weight with my name is displayed here. And at the right, I can see how my passenger or cargo weights affect my center of gravity. I'm going to repeat that same process. Let's say there's someone with whom you're flying regularly, a spouse, a best friend. If you're flying with you regularly, you don't want to keep editing their weights, we can save multiple weights. So I've added my wife. She's 125. We now have those saved weights. Every time I flight plan, I just tap on Jeremy, tap on Susie. And especially if I know we're going to be in those seats, it's pretty easy to do. As the weight is added, it's a little subtle because I'm not adding hundreds of, well, I guess I'm adding hundreds of pounds. I'm not adding a ton of weight. But you can see as I add weight, if you look at that CG envelope on the right-hand side, it will change. It's a dynamic display that changes in response to where you put cargo, where you put passengers, and how much they weigh. As long as your stuff is set up correctly, this will be accurate. I can go through, I can add the rest of my passengers. If I have more people flying with me, I can add additional cargo however I need. You'll notice below my passenger, my seats and cargo fields, I have a fuel field. I'll go ahead and I will add the fuel I plan on using for this flight. Same workflow, I'll tap on that, pop-up keypad opens, and I'll add in 27 gallons of fuel for this flight. I can, to get more accurate landing weights, again, this is all, this isn't required to plan a flight or anything. This is all optional. But I can add in taxi fuel if I'd like to plan for my taxi fuel. I can add in my fuel consumption. I've added 2 pounds of taxi fuel, 20 pounds of fuel to destination, which is going to give me, I guess, a 5-pound reserve. And at the right-hand side, you'll notice this has been updated. I can now see my zero fuel weight, my takeoff weight, and my landing weight, and you can see that summary displayed across the top here. So this is something we should all be doing, obviously, before every flight. Oftentimes we don't, because it's kind of a hassle. If you're using ForeFlight, though, this is pretty easy to do. Like, I know I walked through it. I think that took me 6 minutes. This would probably, in real time, take 2 minutes to do, maybe even less, especially if you're saving loads. So now I'm going to plan a flight. Aircraft profile has been built. Weight and balance profile has been built. I'm going to go ahead and plan a flight. There's a couple different places you can do this in the app. I'm going to start doing this on my Maps tab. Tapping on my Maps tab brings me back to where we started. This is my interactive map in ForeFlight. Right now I'm viewing my aeronautical map, but we can turn on other layers. I want to start by, I'm not going to use any other layers yet. I'm going to start by just opening up what we call our flight plan drawer. That's the FPL button on top. Once you see that, the drawer will slide open. And this is where, as we're planning a flight on the map, our flight will appear. As long as we've selected an aircraft that has been set up correctly and we select an ETD, we'll also receive a live performance summary across the bottom. And I'll show what that looks like in just a moment. At its most simplest, to create a route, we're just going to tap in that field. The keypad will slide up from the bottom of the screen. And you'll just start typing in the ICAO code for your departure airport. Again, there's other ways to do this in the app. This is what I'm showing because this is probably the quickest way. So I've typed in Kilo Lima Alpha Kilo. Kilo Lima Alpha Lima. That's here at Lakeland. Once I hit the space button, ForeFlight will recognize whatever you've typed as what we call a route element. So now it's a distinct element. If you were to hit return, if you're old enough to remember when the return button was the enter button, if you hit return, it will still qualify as a route element, but the keypad will collapse. So if you want to keep typing, hit space. Every time you hit space, ForeFlight recognizes, oh, this is a distinct element. So we can continue our flight plan doing the same thing. I can just type in the ICAO code for my destination airport. Just to show you, though, once something is in our flight plan drawer, if we tap on it, we can now interact with that in a whole bunch of other ways. So you can see we can replace that, we can insert something before, we can show the airport diagram for that, a whole bunch of ways, and this goes with any route element. Airports, coordinates, waypoints, any of that stuff. I'm not going to mess with any of that right now because this is our first flight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my search bar, and the conceit behind this, the idea behind this is, let's say you know where you're leaving from Lakeland, and you know the city you're going back to, but you don't know the ICAO airport code. We can use the search bar to type in a common name. You can type in a city name, and the search bar will filter out, and hopefully you'll be able to find the airport you're looking for. So in this example, what did I use? Montgomery. So I started typing in Montgomery, because let's say I'm flying to Montgomery, Alabama, but I don't know the airport code for it. I'll just type in the city name, Montgomery. You'll see in my search bar, I have several different examples that could be what I'm looking for. At the very top, I see I'm looking for KMGM. I can see that it's 595 nautical miles to the east of my present location. I created this when I was sitting in the office in Austin, Texas. That's why that was 595 nautical miles to the east of my present location. So ForeFlight will read where you're currently at when it shows that data. I'm just going to go ahead and tap on that. The map will focus on that location. I haven't added this to my route. This is not part of my flight plan yet. You'll see I have a whole bunch of options now, though, on the right-hand side. Direct to will plan a flight based on your literal current location to that point. It can be an airport, it can be a waypoint, it can be coordinates, whatever. Full screen will open up the airport's view for that airport. I can toggle between weather, runway, procedures, NOTAMs. I can look at all that. All I'm going to do is add this to my route. So Lakeland to Montgomery. This adds that airport route bubble. I now have both of my route elements visible here. And ForeFlight has drawn a direct flight plan between those two positions. I'm going to zoom into my route to get a little more detail. So all I've done, just make sure this transition was clear here, I've just zoomed in. So I've just zoomed in on the map. I'm looking closer to our departure airport. One of the things I've noticed on this is that I have a pretty long stretch of my flight that currently, direct to is a straight line, currently is taking me out over the Gulf. Maybe I'm not comfortable flying over open water, and I want to move my route inland. There's several different ways all these things can be done in ForeFlight. The simplest thing is called rubber banding. I'm going to press and hold anywhere on the route, and there should be a video. Hopefully this plays correctly. There we go. I'm going to press and hold anywhere on the map. Just move. When I let go, you'll see ForeFlight has now highlighted the point at which I let go. That's where I let go. On my search bar on the right-hand side, this is that position. That's the coordinates of that position and my distance and bearing to that position. So if I tap on the coordinates at the top, I'll just add this to my route. Those coordinates will be added to my route. For this walkthrough, I'm going to select an actual known waypoint just because that might be easier for ATC. You don't have to. You can just select those coordinates. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that first waypoint there, Koyak. And you don't need to. You could just use those coordinates, but I'm going to use that just so I'm using a known waypoint when I file this with ATC. So this is something I can probably more easily reference. So I'm going to reopen my flight plan drawer here. I can see my original route now with that waypoint included. If I had used those coordinates, this would be presented there as lat long. You'll now notice along the bottom of this screen, I have my flight summary information, distance, ETE, fuel burn, and winds. You'll notice my ETA is blank. The reason it's blank is because I haven't entered in an ETD. So one of the common things I see in the booth, especially after these seminars, people will tell me like it's not showing the ETA, and I have to show them, oh, you didn't enter in a departure. So we don't know when you're leaving. We can't tell you when you're going to get there, but we can estimate how long it will take you. So I'm going to enter in an ETD. Just tap on that. Use the I don't know how to describe that tool. We're going to use that tool. We're going to enter in an ETD of Sunday, April 7th. And it was a little subtle there, but the wind forecast changed as well, because we're going to pull the forecast winds for your estimated time of departure. And the fuel burn and the ETE will change based on that as well. So you'll notice that on here, I'm actually skirting it's actually covered up my flight plan drawer, but I'm going to skirt the eastern edge of the Class Bravo airspace around Tampa. So I probably want to look in at that in a little more detail to see if I'm going to bust that Class Bravo. Again, there's a couple ways we can do this. We can literally just zoom in on the map and see, and then rubber band our way around if we want to. I'm going to go ahead and use the Profile tool. So I'll tap on Profile. This is available to our Pro Plus and Performance Plus users. If you're a Basic Plus user, you won't see this. Again, if you're a Basic Plus user, my recommendation, just zoom in on the map. If you're going through that airspace, just drag to the right or to the left to avoid that airspace. But what I can see here is all the airspace along my route is presented. If I tap on any of those airspaces, I'm going to tap on this one. That airspace will be highlighted on the map. This is my Class Bravo. And I'll see those details are presented here. So it looks like I'm right at the edge of this altitude for this Class Bravo, because I think, yeah, this is at 6,000 feet. That's active from 6,000 to 10,000 feet. So I can make any adjustments I need based on this information. It's the tiered airspace.
Right, but you should have something that goes down to the surface normally.
I'd have to check the specific area.
Bravo
Yeah.
above.
I'm unfamiliar with the Tampa airspace.
It's only within 5 miles of the center.
There you go.
It doesn't?
I can pull it up on the map after we're done. We can take a closer look. All right, so let's say I'm satisfied with my route. I've made the changes I need. I've avoided that open water. I've maybe made adjustments around that Class Bravo. You'll notice there's a little exclamation point here. Actually, I covered that up. But you'll notice there's a little exclamation point here. What that means in ForeFlight is we have data for your route that you do not have downloaded to your device. This is us telling you, download this data to your device. Another common question I get from newer users of ForeFlight is, well, how does ForeFlight get information? The short version is if you are connected to the internet, we're getting information from the internet. When you're in the cockpit, you're usually not connected to the internet, so we're not getting information. What we're doing is prompting you to download and cache that data, so during your flight, you'll have access to the current data as of now, as of when you packed for the flight. If you have an ADS-B in, then we can provide live weather, live traffic, things like that. If you don't, you'll want to pack for every flight. So we'll go ahead and we'll tap on pack. you'll see a little pop-up here. It's a graphical representation of my route, as well as a list of what ForeFlight is suggesting you pack for these flights. You can download these individually or all at once. You can ignore them if you want. You'll still be able to file. We're highly suggesting that you do download it so you have the most current data. This corridor that's depicted here, this extends 25 nautical miles east and west of your route. And we will download anything that intersects that corridor. So I guess we're intersecting Georgia. It's Georgia, right? We're intersecting Georgia a little bit here. We'll download all the data for the entire state of Georgia because we've intersected that. I'm going to go ahead and download everything. You'll see a little pop-up telling you how long this is going to take. Obviously, well, hopefully it's obvious, you'll do this before you lose internet connection. If you wait you're in the cockpit to do this, it's probably not going to work. So make sure you do this when you're at home planning, at the FBO, getting ready to go out to the aircraft. So I've done all that. Now I want to receive my weather brief. I'm going to go back to my Maps tab. We have a lot of different weather products on the app. I'm not going to explain all of them now because there's a ton. I'm just going to walk through some of them. These are all dynamic data layers, so you can activate them. The radar layer is sourced from the weather company. It's available at all subscription levels and displays dynamic radar imagery. You'll notice there's a player in the center that you can hit play, scrub backwards, and this should show you the last, I believe it's the last hour of radar imagery. Pro and performance users can also access a cloud forecast layer that shows a 24-hour forecast. Pro and performance users can also view a turbulence map layer. The workflow for this is pretty simple. Overlay it on the map, get an idea. You'll notice on the right-hand side of some of these, you'll see an altitude slider. You can adjust that based on your planned altitude. I've returned to my radar layer, and we can see this doesn't look very friendly around Montgomery. So I want some more specific information from that airport. I'll go ahead and tap on that airport. I've already shown this workflow. I'm going to see my airport information has slid in from the right-hand side. I'm going to tap on weather. By default, I'll always see the current METAR, and it will be translated below. So if there's codes here, you're like, I don't remember what that means, we'll break that out and translate that below. So I want to see now, currently, I'm not going to fly in there, but I'm not going to instantaneously get into Montgomery, so I need to see how this may change in the near future. We have a couple different forecast options. We have a TAF, an MOS forecast. I'm going to look at the daily forecast. I'm going to go ahead and tap on daily. This will display a 10-day daily weather forecast. This looks like this Friday is not going to be good weather. So if I'm able to, maybe I'll readjust my schedule and I'll check my forecast for Saturday. I'll go ahead and tap on that day, and we'll see the forecast broken out on an hour-by-hour forecast. And this will be color-coded for VFR, IFR, LIFR, MVFR. Along the bottom of the screen, I can even see just a color-coded hour-by-hour, so it looks like Thursday is actually the prettiest day. But you can click in there and get some more details about those specifics. One of the other things I'd like to do before I do my weather briefing, I'm in my flight plan drawer. I'm going to tap on the procedure tab. Even if I'm flying VFR, there's some stuff here that could have a lot of utility for you. You'll notice there's a traffic pattern button. I'll go ahead and tap on my traffic pattern. This is really useful if I'm not comfortable. Maybe I've never flown into this airport. I'm going to tap on if I'm receiving current weather. I can also see which runway has the best wind. I'll go ahead and tap on that. And I can overlay on my map and include in my flight plan the traffic pattern. I'm going to select my right traffic. That's the default traffic for this runway, 45. Add this to my route. And I can see in my flight plan drawer, this is included. It is also overlaid on my map. If I were to zoom in, we can see it overlaid on the map, complete with traffic pattern altitude. So I'm satisfied with my flight plan. I'm ready to get my flight briefing and then go ahead and file. I'm going to go ahead and tap on my Send To button, this little box with the up arrow. Then I'm going to send this to my Flights tab. Any flight you've planned is displayed here. We don't automatically delete anything. If you ever want, you can manually delete these, but we'll never remove these. So every flight you've ever planned may be visible here. Once I tap on the briefing button across the top there, ForeFlight will generate an official FAA weather briefing in compliance with 14 CFR 91.103. If the forecast changes between when you first access the briefing and check again, you'll see an alert that the briefing has changed. So every time you open this, the briefing will be generated. We will record on our side and on your device when you viewed that briefing. And I'm going to quickly go through this. You can scroll down to see all the weather information that's included here. There's different formats for the weather briefing. So if you're doing this, yours may look slightly different. You may have interactive tabs across the left. This is the graphical PDF format. So I'm going to keep scrolling down just to view all the weather information I have available. If you need to or want to, you can print this out as hard copies. You can download this as well. I have my METARs and TAFs along the way. All that's ready to go. I'm ready to file my flight. This is very, very simple. In my Flights tab, there's a button that says Proceed to File. I'll tap on Proceed to File. I'll see a summary of all of my information is displayed here. Anything in blue, I can go ahead and edit that. In this example, I can see that my flight rules were set to IFR. I'm going to go ahead and change that over. I'll set that to VFR. And now when I'm ready, I'll just go ahead and tap File. And that's it. Once we send that off, that is electronically filed with ATC. If there's an error, you'll receive a message telling you there's an error. If you have 2 errors within 10 minutes, someone from ForeFlight will contact you to figure out what's going on. Most of the time, the error message you receive is explanatory enough where you can fix it on your own. But if you have, I think it's 2 within 10 minutes, someone's going to reach out to you. If you want to see, if you want to see the actual file, if you tap on this button here, you can generate a PDF without filing it. It'll just be a paper, not a paper, but a digital copy of a paper filing form. I'm going to go ahead and tap on File. You'll notice I get a note here that my altitude may not be correct for the direction for my type of flight. I can force this to file anyway, and I might get rejected. I can force ForeFlight to attempt to file it, or I can correct the error. I've adjusted it to correctly reflect my westerly VFR rules, and I'll receive a confirmation message before filing my flight plan. Once it's filed, you'll see how my buttons down here have changed from cancel, amend, and activate this flight plan. If you need to make any changes, just tap on Amend, make any changes, tap on File Changes, and these are automatically sent to ATC. So you can activate this before your flight, and then you can deactivate when your flight is complete. So I want to record a track log and start logging a flight. There's several different ways we can do this in the app. I want to check on some settings. I'm going to open up my More button, open up my settings. I'm speeding up a little bit to make sure I finish. This is our universal settings. In here, there's a whole bunch of stuff. If you've ever looked at this, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff. Maybe I can't find what I'm looking for. I know I'm looking for my track log stuff. I'm just going to literally search for track log up top, and I can see my track log settings here. There's 2 settings. There's Enable Start Stop Control and Enable Auto Start Stop. If you have enabled Auto Start Stop turned on, anytime you exceed 40 knots in the vicinity of a runway, ForeFlight will start recording your track log. If you'd like to do it manually, turn that off, have Enable Start Stop Control, and that button lives right here where it says Record. I don't have mine automatically record just because I kept getting false positives driving too close to a runway. Because it's a very small runway and the road goes right next to it. So I just do it as part of my pre-flight checklist and manually do it. So I'm recording my track log. The track log records throughout the flight. If it's an automatic start-stop, it will stop recording once you decelerate below 40 knots on a runway. It'll stop that recording. I can access track logs at any time by tapping on the More menu. You'll see there's a track logs tab. These are every track log that I have recorded. This is my device. I have recorded on my device. If you've done enable the auto start stop but never viewed them, you might have hundreds here that you never knew existed. You can send this directly to your logbook. If you want to send this directly to your logbook, just tap on this button here and you can send this to your logbook. Alternatively, and this is something we see at these shows a lot, if I just go ahead and open up my logbook, More, Logbook, every time I've recorded a track log, ForeFlight will suggest you enter this as a draft. So if you do this right now, you go to your logbook, you may see like 99 plus here because you never knew ForeFlight was doing that. We do that. We will suggest, hey, use this track. You can delete these, it doesn't matter. We're suggesting you use this track log and add this to your logbook. If you did want to add it, you can verify or change any of this information. I've noticed that sometimes the Hobbs time is off very slightly, but sometimes it's off, so just verify everything is correct. Verify the aircraft type, tail number, all of that stuff, and then tap on apply, or approve, I'm sorry. That will be added to your logbook. And I know I sped up there at the end, so I think I have 60 seconds left. All right, so to learn more, if you need to learn anything else, the Pilot's Guide, Documents tab, Catalog, ForeFlight, foreflight.com/videos. There is a videos link in the app as well that most people don't know is there. It's more support videos you'll see, or just go to our YouTube channel that has all our videos on it. Blog.foreflight.com, you can see monthly data there, and any page on our website will have a link to that. If you ever have any issues, team@foreflight.com, and that will put you in touch with our pilot support team. They are all pilots. They're all expert ForeFlight users who can answer any questions or issues you have. Again, these are our show specials, 20% off for new and upgrading customers who are new or upgrading to Pro Plus or Performance Plus, 10% off Century Plus, that's our ADS-B in. If you'd like to see these demos, just come over to the booth, and then I'll leave this up here as I just gather my stuff. This is that Wings credit. Again, if you're having trouble with this, I can help you out. It's also posted back there. And I think that's my time. I'll be hanging out for a little bit. Otherwise, come see us in the booth in Hangar C.